Hello and welcome to From the BLN, the Burnley podcast. Well, different competition but same result. The Clarets on the end of a 3-0 defeat at Goodison Park in the Carabao Cup, bringing an end to our League Cup dreams for another season. A bit of a depleted podcast squad again today. No Simon or Woody, but what we have got is myself, Andrew Greaves, Justin Connolly, who braved a very brave man, went to Goodison Park and enjoyed the delights of a Burnley away performance in the Cup last night, and Chris Borden. So, chaps, let's start with you, Justin, because you were there, so you made the effort. Was it as bad as we think it is, or was it a bit of a game of two halves for you?
It was a game of two halves. I mean, I've been trying to think, write a list of positives down. I've got two entries on that list. The first of which is it didn't rain. So I think that's just about where we are with it. I mean, obviously, Muric was a bright spot. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think after they scored their first goal, which was a really sort of horrible, weak goal to give away, we seemed to sort of try and sort of claw back a bit of a foothold in the game, and we got a little bit of momentum going in that first half. But we seem to be lacking just in that final third. We got ourselves into some good positions, but there's just nothing produced at the end of it. There's no sort of shots on target. I think that there was a miserly number of shots in total, never mind on target. But I don't know. It felt like early on in the game we were really going to struggle, but then we seemed to just sort of get a grip of it a little bit. Sander Berger, I think, was receiving the ball from Muric, who was pinging them through the lines and getting us quite a long way up the pitch, and Berger was driving forward with it. But it just seemed to hit a brick wall. I mean, I'm not saying Everton were exceptionally gifted at defending on the night, but we just didn't seem to be able to get around them for some reason.
Yeah, and Chris, it feels like there's a crisis of confidence in every third of the field, doesn't it? I mean, we'll talk about Muric, and I think he inspired a bit more confidence. But what Justin's talking about in terms of that going forward, there's almost that kind of lack of belief, lack of trust in their own abilities, lack of confidence that, hang on a minute, we're in the final third. Shit, what do we do with it now? Because, as Justin said, I think it's 2 shots in total, 1 shot on target, which is a bit of a lashed effort from an acute angle by Odebear in the kind of final minutes to win as a corner in injury time. It's not that kind of free-flowing football we perhaps expected when we saw the transfers we brought in, is it?
No, like I say, the sort of the most effective sort of Burnley attacks that I can think of have started again, probably from the goalkeeper, and we've played at lightning speed through team. The break at Nottingham Forest in the cup game that the chance wasn't taken, but it was devastating football. The opening goal against Chelsea, where they've just ripped down that right hand side with Vitinho, Foster picks it up, and Odebear manages to find a corner. Devastating football. But we're almost relying on when the ball does get to the wide players, on them beating 2 and 3 players, producing a footballing miracle. Really, there's sort of no real relationship between the wide players and the fullbacks. Invariably on the right hand side, we don't know if it's going to be Roberts or Vitinho. Left hand side, Taylor's ended up making it his own through default. Delcroix was half decent, I suppose, last night. But there's no sort of partnerships. We've no partnerships at centre half. Berger and Cullen hasn't been effective in the league games. He'll have to obviously find a replacement for Cullen on Saturday with him suspended. But it's just, very, 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 very frustrating. The identity that they had last season has just disappeared. And to be fair, I mean, we've said, like you say, we'll try and judge things after the Palace game in particular. Maybe we judge things when Benson's fit and when Ekdal's fit and Foster's back, and so on and so forth. But as it stands, I'm struggling for any sort of positivity at all.
Yeah, and Justin, I mean, Chris mentioned there that lack of identity and lack of relationships, partnerships, call it what you want. It really does feel like that, doesn't it? Every time we put out an 11, it feels like an 11 that have never even met each other. You know, last season, the beauty of it was, you know, you knew where every single player was going to be on that pitch. You know, we had obviously the kind of sticky opening where we were getting used to Muric playing those little balls, and obviously, you know, Cullen and Muric's mistake. I don't know who's really to blame against Blackpool. But after that kind of hump, we were starting to, every ball that came in, you knew the fullbacks had gone wide. There was always a ball on. If somebody was coming behind a Cullen, we knew Cullen was going to drop back into the back line if somebody went forward. You wouldn't trust that to happen this year, would you? Because there just doesn't feel like, and part of it is probably because of the amount of changes that we see every game. What was it? I think 7 changes. Yesterday, 5 or 7 changes against Everton. There's not that opportunity to build these relationships because it appears we're trying to use as many players as we can to try and bring them up to speed, but it's having a real detrimental effect on what you really need in football is your right back knowing exactly where your right winger is, your left back knowing exactly where your left winger is, your 2 central midfielders in the pivot, if you're going to call it a pivot, need to know exactly how they're going to spread that ball. You know, I agree with Chris. We should probably judge it when Bayer's back, when Ekdal's back, when Benson's back fit, when we've got more of what we would perhaps see as a first choice. But we're going to have to do amend, aren't we, to a certain extent?
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think you said it, but I think there was a strong identity last season, and it seemed to work. Whoever the personnel was, obviously we didn't have that many changes last season as we did this. But you know, you remember when Howard Bellis and Bayer were out for a while injured, and Alderkirk and Ekdal just slotted straight in, and they were just brilliant, and just the whole shape of the team didn't change, and what they seem to be doing didn't change. This season, obviously, the results aren't going our way, so I think we're just flailing around trying to find a combination of players that will fit the bill, and there seems to be less of a sort of a flexibility about how the team sets up and how he wants them to play than there is about the personnel that he chooses to do it. And I can't help thinking that's a bit of a mistake because, like you said, football teams have these partnerships all over the pitch. And if you're playing with a different person each game, it doesn't matter what you do in training. It's going to be hard to forge those patterns and forge those sort of relationships with each other. So yeah, I agree. But I mean, a lot of the changes have been forced on us. We've got another one coming up this weekend, haven't we, with Josh Cullen being out. I can't help thinking that might give us an opportunity to try something different in that midfield. But yeah, it seems very much like we're just sort of throwing a team onto the pitch and just hoping it'll gel somehow rather than going at it with a plan. I mean, I'm sure there is a plan, but it's quite difficult to discern what that plan might be at the moment.
Yeah. And Chris, our old kind of weakness at set pieces that kind of reared its head a couple of times last season. I'm thinking of the Sheffield United game in particular. I mean, the second goal, the corner comes in. We've got Cullen on Tarks, which feels like the biggest mismatch in football history. And then Anana has the freedom of Liverpool in the 6-yard box because we've got a line of 3 to 5 Burnley players all just kind of stood there staring. Is it zonal? Is it man-to-man? There just doesn't, Vincent Kompany said, stopping conceding goals is the easiest thing in the world. Unfortunately, as good a defender as he is, and we had this complaint when we had Eddie Howe in charge that how can we have Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall, who were both defenders, and not know how to defend? Looks like we've forgotten how to defend.
They score goals under Eddie.
Exactly. That's the thing.
They'd lose 4-3 and draw 3 apiece. That's It's like I say, the second goal. I think there's a still of all the Burnley players are the left hand side of the goal, and then there's this gap, and Muric and Onana and all the Everton posse that attack the ball. It's a mishmash, isn't it? It's a mismatch. The first, you look at the first goal. It's just, Dwight McNeil's not bent this absolutely sensational ball in, an unplayable delivery. He's just stood a ball up.
He just clips it over, really, didn't he? It wasn't anything,
As we full well know, but we didn't see. I thought he should have scored more goals, James Tarkowski, but for Burnley. But he's more desire, more determination. It's those factors just to get to a ball first, and it is if you're the attacking player running onto a ball, fine, I can accept that it is. Sometimes, it's more difficult to be the defender when you're a bit maybe flat-footed, but we have to deal with these situations a lot better. You can see that coming. If it's going out to Dwight, there's only one thing happening. You got, and even though they haven't played with him, they know full well what's happening. They know football, and I mean the third goal's the worst. I mean, the game's gone at that stage, and a lot of the heads were down, but. We've spoke about Aldakeel's recovery pace, and it just treading water. Albeit Beto's sub new to the game, but how that situation transpired, where he gets to the byline, Beto, and he can. It's just an all round shambles defensively, and you just know if you put the ball on top of Burnley, and every manager in the league will be saying the same. Put the ball on top of them, and they will struggle. And even Muric coming out grabbing a couple of balls last night, was encouraging. But I still even with Muric, I think that remains an issue because of what's in front of him.
Yeah, and that's a worry, isn't it, coming up to the Palace game, because they're a big physical side, aren't they? You bring their kind of back line forward for set pieces. That is they're a physical side, aren't they? They're almost that. And they've always had that kind of physical midfield presence, whether it's, MacArthur who was, and whoever it is in that midfield, they've got people who are runners, they've got people who are tough in the tackle. It does feel like we're just soft. Somebody on Twitter suggested that Aldakeel needs a season in the gym rather than a season in the Premier League, because all the things that we thought he was brilliant at last season, which he was, and I've no doubt in his ability. I think he's a brilliant talent, but this just feels like men against boys. I mean, there was a situation where O'Shea just bounced off Dominic Calvert-Lewin last night.
Yeah.
There's two defenders coming towards Calvert-Lewin. There's a ball over the top, and somehow O'Shea, he gets back and makes the kind of, goal-saving challenge, but he just bounces off Calvert-Lewin, and you just think to yourself, that's one of your centre halves. You know what I mean? You should be bullying Calvert-Lewin 45 yards from goal. There's no way Dominic Calvert-Lewin should be getting that ball. Just a simple punt over the top, and we've got two defenders sucked into the ball, sucked into Calvert-Lewin. One ends up on the floor, manages to recover. Fair play to Dara O'Shea for that, but it just feels like, mismatched, as Chris said, doesn't it? It's, how do you stop that though? Because we've got to get through till January before we can bring in reinforcements. I took a bit of stick this morning by suggesting Delquar should be in the side on Saturday. I thought he did all right. I think he looked pretty calm on the ball. He's a big lad. I suggested perhaps Charlie Taylor at left centre half and him at left back, and people were saying, well, why are you doing that when one's a centre half, one's a left back? Well, they're both technically left backs and they're both technically left centre halves. I just think Charlie's experience as part of that central two, because we've no experience, have we? Let's be honest. I mean, Roberts is alone himself. Don't even get me started on Roberts. He might have the Premier League games under his belt, but I find him very immature. Aldakeel's only whatever age he is. O'Shea is hardly that experience. I just feel we just we miss experience in that back line.
I think Aldakeel is a great player, and he's gonna improve. He's having a very, very rocky start to the season, but he's probably suffering post-traumatic stress disorder given all the goals that they've shipped in the first 10 games. That sort of record is not going to fill you with an enormous amount of confidence, and he is quite visibly nervous, I think, on the pitch. He's making some very strange decisions and and some mistakes that's given the ball away in terrible positions on the pitch. And I don't know whether he trusts himself. I think that's the big problem. What do you do? Do you play him through that? Do you play him through that in the hope that we dig in against Palace and somehow get a clean sheet and build on that, or do you take him out of the firing line? I think if we had somebody who could step in and maybe, as you say, Delquar and Charlie Taylor might be a solution to that problem. But then you've still got Dara O'Shea to deal with, who's also, not had the best starts of the season. So I think it's an awkward situation there. We're suffering with those injuries really badly in the centre of the pitch. It would be nice to have the luxury to take one or both of those two out of the firing line just to, try and build a bit of confidence. But I'm not sure we've got the bodies to do that.
I mean, Chris, somebody suggested Dara O'Shea's played right back, probably very competent at right back. Do you shuffle O'Shea to right back where perhaps you're less, you make a mistake, there's someone behind? Or is it just a case of, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? Is it, are we desperate for Ekdal and Bear to come back?
Well, absolutely. I'd sooner sort of, round pegs in round holes. I don't want to be sort of moving. I don't like centre half moving over to right back and so on and so forth. But if this was, let's say, go back sort of 15, 16 years or so, and Burnley are in the Championship, and just about, we're not going down, but we're not probably strong enough to challenge, and you can throw in a McCann or a Lafferty or a Chaplow and give them 50 odd games, knowing full well. I always remember Steve Cottrell saying that they can make mistakes because it's not going to cost us. We're not going to get relegated. We're not going to finish in the top six. And they can make mistakes and learn, and all of a sudden they've racked up half a century of games. Well, we ain't got that luxury. As it stands, I say you're next bottom, and you're facing relegation, and everything that goes with that, the loss of finance, etc., etc. It's the learning curve again as well at this level. I mean, we're talking Alderkiel is no mug. He's been called up by the Belgian national side, who, albeit in a state of flux after the golden generation, Delquar's played for them for this golden generation. So that they're no mugs by a German under-21 skipper, and O'Shea's an international footballer. They know the game, but at the moment it's just, I'd say, they're struggling against physicality, they're struggling against pace, they're struggling in open play, they're struggling in from set pieces, and I mean, are they not getting enough protection? Do we need two out-and-out defensive midfielders in there? Can the front players press a bit more? I mean, I've seen some criticism of Tresor's sort of work rate against the ball and things like that. It's not like, that Goodmanson plays there. He's an up-and-downer. He'll graft both ways, and, you can rely on him to help you out down that side. But, with some of the other wide players, you're just not going to get that. Koleosho grafts. But defensively, is he have that mind, that mindset? Probably not just yet. But it's on company. He's the one of the greatest centre halves in Premier League history, and you've got Michael Jackson, who was a very good lower league journeyman centre half himself as well. It's on them to find a solution. But we've spoken about balance, and we just. Like last year, Burnley were getting 70% of the ball every week and not having to defend for the most part. That ain't the case in the Premier League. So that's where the issues. So we saw chinks in the structure last year at times, but emerged with the greatest defensive record in the league. But they're a long way from that this time.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on. I noticed a thread on up the Clarets asking if VK had lost the dressing room. Now, this is something that we keep referring back to the European season where we had a horrible start and we were on 12 points, whatever it was, after that defeat by Everton, amazingly, on Boxing Day. And we talk about Dyche bringing Heaton back in for Hart and McNeil essentially coming into the side and saving us. Is there any similarities beyond that? Because I always thought that particular season, the biggest issue was Sean really didn't care much for being in Europe. And it almost felt like a bit of a inconvenience because we didn't have a big enough squad. But what we did have is we had all the players who'd got us into Europe, pinnacle of their careers playing in Europe, albeit in the qualifying rounds of the Europa League. But I felt that the balance within the squad mentality was out that season because Sean Dyche had decided that he was going to play the likes of Kevin Long and Ben Gibson and Phil Bardsley in European games. And there were lots of players sulking because they thought to themselves, well, we've got them into Europe. We could have a bit of a tip at this. And they weren't playing. And it took that kind of, by Sean's account, a fairly honest sit-down conversation after Everton and then getting back to basics. Is there a similar situation here, do you think, Justin, whereby those players that have got us into the Premier League, I mean, that opening day against City, I don't think we could believe quite how few players who'd been anywhere near last season's squad were actually in that starting lineup. And it stayed the same. We've still barely seen Jack Cork. Brownhill's been more of a bit part player. Charlie Taylor's only been brought back in due to necessity. Muric has only had a look in cup games. Do you think there's a chance? I'm not saying he's lost the dressing room. I think that's outrageous. But is there a bit of a hangover from the fact that these players that have got us into the Premier League have been swept aside so easily for this kind of new brand of footballer we've brought in that's clearly not working?
Well, I mean, it's not working in the sense that we're not winning games, isn't it? I mean, that we're losing games badly. But I think we need to remember that what is happening now is actually the plan, isn't it? The plan is that we get all these young, inexperienced talents who we think are going to be world beaters sooner or later. We throw them into the team. We give them as much experience in the Premier League as we possibly can, which is inevitably going to be like a bruising experience, but hopefully a learning experience as well. We watch them flounder for a bit. Hopefully we can teach them to float, and then eventually they'll start to swim. That is actually the stated plan, isn't it? That's what they are trying to do. And the gamble in that is they're hoping that we'll somehow amass enough points to stay in the division, and then those players will kick on next season. But I think it's a very, very tall order for so many young players to have so much responsibility placed on them. And I think that we've reached the point in the season now with what we've got 4 points from 10 games. I'm sure they would have hoped, if not expected, to have a few more points on the board by now, even given this plan they've got. But I think we've reached the point now where we do need to sort of start plugging some holes. I said it before the Bournemouth game, but I think the midfield is a real issue. I don't think we can go into any of these Premier League games with just two in the centre of the pitch. I think that's part of the reason why the defence is creaking so much, because they're under so much pressure all the time, because we just keep giving the ball away. And I think that's why we've stopped creating those chances up front like we were at the start of the season. We just haven't got enough in that midfield to protect the defence and move the ball far enough up the pitch to get these young talents involved. So I'm not entirely surprised by what's happening. I think we all hope that the corner would start to be turned by now. The problem is it seems to be getting worse, doesn't it? We seem to be not creating much and still shipping those goals. So something's got to give sooner or later, because we're now in danger of getting cut adrift a little bit if it's allowed to move in this direction any further.
Yeah. And Chris, I guess, we will see a change in that midfield on Saturday, and a change we've not seen apart from the odd cup game. I really like Josh Cullen, and it's clear company really trusts Josh Cullen to be one of his kind of lieutenants. I do just wonder whether I feel really bad saying this. He's part of the root of the problem in that he's getting bullied, and I'm not saying this is he's a very talented player, but I just wonder whether Saturday is an opportunity to try something slightly different that perhaps frees up Sanderberger, that perhaps offers a bit more protection. There's lots of little things that I just think Cullen is not being helped by the players that are being selected around him, and company clearly wants to select those players around him. So do we drop somebody else into the Cullen role, be that Cork or Brownhill, and does that potentially then solve the issue that Justin's just said and you alluded to in terms of that speed at getting from front to back, which we do? We've shown it against Spurs, against United on breaks, against Chelsea for the goal, against Forest. I guess the question is could Cullen be the issue, and does Saturday give us a chance to try something different in there, or again, are we rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic?
Well, I think people forget about Cullen. They look at his age and think, oh, he's an experienced footballer, and he plays every game that Ireland play, but he's another who's learning about life in the Premier League. It's not had much Premier League football, if any, off the top of my head with West Ham. He's been a lower league, loan man before going to Anderlecht, and obviously having the success he had last year, where this midfield metronome that we keep mentioning. But he's a super player, but he needs someone with that bit more physicality and that ability to get pick up a football and drive at teams as well that we've been blessed with down the years. With I mentioned McCann again. The ground he'd eat up in central midfield. Yeah. The likes of Wade Elliott, who's obviously a wide player, but had great success playing in field. I love the way Berger, when he drives with the ball, he's really elegant, and he eats up a lot of ground without looking particularly rapid. That sort of the moment where he got down the right hand side to the byline and fed a ball over, and narrowly denied last night, and he needs to play off the front, and then we need the sort of double pivot as such. Whether it's Cork and Brownhill, or bringing Masengo in out of the blue. The lad looks to have the attributes to be able to protect the football under pressure, and manipulate the ball to get us going forward. It's sooner or later he's going to need an opportunity, and this may well be it. But Brownhill's not a natural pivot, not a natural defensive midfielder, but he gives you that bit of nast, a bit of bite. He'll intercept things, he'll win the ball, and that maybe that sort of goes into the equation. But it's, I think we all felt all summer that they hadn't addressed that situation suitably, and it's come to roost, hasn't it?
Yeah, I do wonder whether Masengo is a fitness issue in terms of he was obviously quite late in the door, and had been without a club, so it's not like he'd already started pre-season elsewhere, because he'd obviously left Bristol City and left I can't remember which French club he was at last year, but his stats last season, the second half of the season in Ligue 1, were very good, and it almost I can't remember who it was, but one of these kind of stats-based Twitter accounts had actually posted a report and said everything that we were looking for, essentially he has that ability to drive with the ball, to protect the ball, protect the back four, drop into the back, drop into a back line. I do wonder whether, I think that was his first appearance in the first team matchday squad last night. I wonder whether he's now perhaps approaching the fitness level we need for match fitness. I know he's played for the under-21s and the under-18s as an overage player a couple of times, but I think you're right. I think in terms of Sanderberg, I think I was speaking to a mate of mine who's a Sheffield United fan. He said he can look a bit lazy at times, which I think I've accused him of. not getting involved. He kind of flicks a foot out, and it's not really a strong challenge. But actually, he's very deceptive with the ball in terms of pushing forward and driving. And we saw it, for the disallowed goal against Forest, for instance. He does come on sometimes and change the rhythm of games, doesn't he? He's very much a player who you can rely on to change games. Looking ahead to Palace now becomes almost a must-win, doesn't it? I mean, we'd have almost accepted kind of if we'd have picked up a positive result at Bournemouth, it being a not-lose game. But it does feel, with Arsenal away after that, and it was the madness of Joe Skinner suggesting on Monday's podcast that if we get a positive result against Palace, we might then think about a positive result at Arsenal. And I think we were all a bit like, yeah, you know what, Joe, you're absolutely spot on there.
Yeah.
We've got to get a positive result against Palace, haven't we, Justin? I mean, it feels like not just
Absolutely.
a 6 point, a must-win game rather than must not lose.
Absolutely. I mean, they're 8 points ahead of us, but I think they've had a much easier start to the season. And I think even Roy Hodgson is conceding that this is a game that Burnley will be looking at and thinking, we could get something. I mean, obviously it's going to be tough, but I honestly think if we can strengthen that middle of the pitch, if we can get Court, Brownhill and Berger playing together, it might protect the back four a bit more. It might give us a bit. I mean, we're going to have to be stronger in that midfield against Palace, aren't we? Because they're big, strong lads, and we need to be able to avoid that sort of bullying that we've had. The big problem for me is, so far, teams haven't had to be that good to beat us, have they?
Yeah.
They haven't had to try that hard to because we shoot ourselves in the foot so often by conceding early-ish goals, and then that just seems to sap the life out of it. That's what happened at Everton. They got a soft goal, and I said halfway through the second half, I said, we're making it difficult for ourselves here. We're going to have to play. If we play like this, we're going to have to score 5 goals every game to be in with a chance of racking up any points. The guy in front of me just turned around and said, "This team's never going to score 5 goals in a game," and I think that is unfortunately true. So I think what we really need to do is make ourselves difficult to beat, and I think that's the platform that you have to put down to try and get yourself forward into a position where you give yourself a chance of winning a game. Never mind, actually going and doing it. We don't stand a chance at the moment. We need to sort that fragile defense out. We need to give them a bit more protection, and then we've got a platform where we can, use these exciting young talents we've got. Because at the moment, like I say, we don't stand a chance if we're going to give 3 goals away every game, do we? I mean, that's not, it's not rocket science. It's just, it seems like a sort of fairly straightforward thing. And Company has, as you alluded to before, has said it's easy to stop conceding goals. Now, this weekend, Saturday, 3:00, that's the time to put this plan into action.
Yeah. And I mean, Palace are not without their own injury worries, are they? I think Eze and Elise both out. I know Roy Hodgson attracted some criticism, Chris, for criticising his own band of young players after the Spurs game, and been very critical. I think he's come out today and apologised or confirmed that he's apologised to the young players and basically said, look, I was a bit out of order, disappointed to lose games, but he basically said, look, I brought some young players on, and rather than keeping us at the level, we actually got worse, and that's no good. These players are meant to take us on. It's not going to be an easy game, but it's not going to be an easy game for Palace either, is it? I mean, for all of our kind of rotten run that we've been on, if we can string together 70 minutes of decent football as opposed to just patches of 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, if we can get some consistency, this could be a game we're looking at, licking his lips a little bit and thinking this could just start to turn the tide a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, they're looking at you've got a very, very solid Crystal Palace team as per, plus Eze, and obviously if Eze is not there and Elise is not there, they lose that stardust, Palace. But it's almost like Roy hasn't been away when you look at the lineup. Anderson and Gay, Ward, Mitchell, Schlupp, Decore, Will Hughes, Klein. It's like that Ayu's signed a new deal this week, hasn't he? He's been there forever.
That, yeah.
It's they're solid, but they're only scoring at, I think, 0.8 goals a game, conceding 1.3 a game. They've won one of the last 5, lost the last 2. It's an eminently winnable game, but they're going to have to get their noses in front, and and they're going to have to build from that. If they go behind, I fear the worst. But they just I say a big shout out for Sam Johnston, one of my. I was at Exton Villa. He's one of the Exton alumni that have come through and played for England that we're all very proud of. Him and Dave Unsworth. But he's effectively keeping Nick Pope out of the England squad at the moment, and looks to be on merit as well. But, they're a top side. Gay's a top talent. Yeah. I think he's he can be knocking on the door to be one of England's starting centre halves next summer. I think he's again pace, positional sense. He's built. He anticipates, uses the ball well, and absolute diamond of a kid as well. But it's I'd say get score first and force them to come out, and all of a sudden we've got a game on, haven't we? Where we can maybe break at pace like we've spoken about and take advantage. Because I say without Eze and Elise, I think we can at least cope with them. Edwards never really set things alight, which is probably the kiss of death from my part. But Will Hughes is a good player, but he's someone that Burnley were looking at a couple of years ago. And, he's not really. Again, is he the type of player we should be fearing? Not really. It's eminently winnable, but I think. I mean, if Burnley lose Saturday, I can see things getting a bit. Not ugly. That's the wrong word, but it's going to be. The pressure's going to be ramped up, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think you probably have provided the kiss of death when you said they're scoring 0.8 goals per game. Welcome to Burnley, boys. Help yourself. We'll check you out on the way out, kind of thing. But I agree.
It's not that long ago since I described the Everton Carabao Cup clash as an eminently winnable game.
I was just going to utter the words.
It was.
I was just about to utter the words. Never a better time to play Crystal Palace. Just to kind of really put the kibosh on us getting anything on Saturday. But of course, after Palace, we have got kind of Arsenal away. But coming up in the distance, you may have seen this today. We have got the West Ham game, which is the club's first flag game. And I don't know if you saw this today, chaps. They, as part of the kind of let's make Turf Moor a fortress, it looks like we've decided against the drummer. The drummer has been parked. There's some very disappointed drummers out there, I'm sure. But the safe standing, which seemed to be a bit of an afterthought in the press release, is hopefully going to be in before the end of the year. I presume it's a cricket field stand, but we await further details. But we are allowing flags in the grounds now. The club, in their wisdom, under flags and banners at Turf Moor, happy to announce Burnley FC's first team fixture, our first home fixture with flags and banners, is going to be against West Ham on the 25th of November to commemorate. The first 200 fans will receive an official Burnley FC flag to proudly wave during the game. Now, anybody else can take a flag in, of course, as long as you purchase an approved flag from the Clarets store in a range of Burnley FC branded designs. Now, these flags are 15 quid a piece. I'm guessing there's going to be about 235 flags in total. Chris, you mentioned the Newcastle flag wall. Last week at Bournemouth, we had, by the looks of things, looking at some tweets that I saw, flags on every seat. 200 flags feels a little bit, and I presume these flags aren't huge. It feels a little bit like we're not going to see these flags make much of a difference. And I can't see many people rushing out and spending 15 quid on a flag. It feels a bit like another, I don't want to say an own goal because that's probably a little bit unfair. I get what they're trying to do. It just feels like another slightly ill thought out, forced way of creating atmosphere, doesn't it, Chris?
Oh yeah, but let's say I was reading, comment from Darren Bentley, who obviously used to work at the club and works at Everton, and he was saying the sort of policy at Everton is bring any flag you like, as long as it's not got any profanity on it or anything contentious or anything like that. Do what you like. I mean, wouldn't it be magic if we had like the war flags and we've got someone goes out and creates a fabulous tribute to Vincent Kompany on a flag. We won the league at Ewood with the team celebration on it, or anything. But a flag of Stan, a flag of Sean Dyche, a flag of Wade Elliott. I don't care. Just decorate the place. They're fabulous. These Newcastle, the tifos they like to call them. Palace are the same. We give Palace due respect. When you go to Selhurst, they amp up the atmosphere and they like their flags and things like that. But this sounds like I applaud the intention, but the reality is usually disappointed.
Yeah, and you made a point off. I'm going to drop you in it now. I'm going to throw you under the bus here, Justin. You made a point before we started recording by saying you'd never been in a situation where a dire situation was made better by somebody waving a flag. So I'm guessing you're not going to be rushing to to be one of the first 200.
I'm going to be the grumpy old man in this scenario. I don't want flags at all. I'll be honest. I mean, it strikes me with this and the drummer, which. I don't know whether they have part of that idea. It's not mentioned in that press release, is it? No. But I mean, I imagine they would have mentioned it if they were still going ahead with it. Maybe they have. Hopefully, they've quietly forgotten about it. But it seems to me they're trying to make turf more a hostile environment, not for the opposition, but for me. I don't want somebody banging a drum on me. I don't want somebody flying a flag in front of me so I can't see what's going on. It's just not. I mean. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I don't think this kind of thing is aimed at me. But what baffles me about this whole scenario is we've had 5 home games right this season. We've conceded 16 goals in those 5 home games and only scored 4. Now I'm not. It doesn't take a genius to puzzle out that the atmosphere is going to be a little bit flat if you're conceding so many goals and you're losing so many games so heavily. And that, to me, there have been moments when the crowd has got up. Think of when Lyle Foster scored that goal against Spurs early on. After that goal went in, the place went mad. Perhaps a little bit too mad because we drove forward and conceded one on the break, didn't we? But and that the first sort of period after half time against Villa when they came out and looked like they were gonna have a go. The crowd did get up. It's about what happens on the pitch, and honestly, I can't think of a situation that we found ourselves in at home this season that the subdued atmosphere would have been helped by a drummer and people waving flags. I just can't see how when you're sort of 3 and 4 down, that is going to drag the team to where it needs to be. We need to get things right on the pitch, don't we? And I'd like to see more focus on that. Flags, I'm delighted they're charging 15 quid for them because to me that means that they're not going to sell very many, are they?
Well, there we go. We had Woody being really positive when you weren't here on Sunday when we were recording, Justin. So I think might have to ban you and bring in. The club have also promised, we should say, a better playlist, a better match day playlist. Now, this is something that I used to always have a laugh with your ex-colleague Chris Kelvin. Of course, we used to have a bit of a laugh about the dire state of the Turf Moor playlist. And this morning on Twitter, we asked if what would you include on the playlist? And I'm going to read some of the examples here and see if you guys agree. So Russell Shardlaw suggested that bringing back Tom Hark. I'm not sure about that. I never used to like Piranha by Tom Hark. No. He says that's a blast from the past.
Time, it served a purpose for a while.
Yeah. Rob Thomas on Twitter again, or X, whatever we're going to call it. Don't Let Me Down by Bad Company.
Oh,
quite a good one.
Yeah,
that's off their debut album. It's a very good debut album. A couple of people, including Andrew Barron, suggested Down Down by Status Quo.
It's a bit premature.
Let's keep that for the end of the season. BFC 84 Ash, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, Rolling Stones. Here Comes That Sinking Feeling, the Eurythmics. Where Have All the Good Times Gone by Van Halen. Under Pressure by Queen, and Losing My Religion by R.E.M. That's a brilliant selection.
I can't think any of those are going to help.
Casey Cord suggested the Benny Hill theme. Some of our defending this.
They should play that during the games, not before them.
Yaz, The Only Way Is Up, says Kevin John. I like that one. Dave Clark suggested Armin van Buuren, Turn It Up. That'll really get us going.
Dave Clark should be suggested his own music, shouldn't he?
He should, yeah. Dave Clark 5, yeah.
Played at Crystal Palace.
500 Miles, says the 1882 Lounge podcast. Again, think it's had its time. A couple of people suggested Tub Thumping, Paul Walsh and somebody else. Rich, which is Pie Based Life Form on Twitter, suggests, still haven't found what I'm looking for. You two as a tribute to our defending from set pieces. That's quite a good one. I like that. Mystify Wayne on X Twitter suggests White Flag Dido. We do kind of send up the white flag.
Mystify by NXS. That's
that'd be a good one, wouldn't it? Yeah, I like that. Anti-football, the rather hilarious anti-football on Twitter. Definitely follow anti-football if you don't already. A friend of mine suggested "Happy Together" by the Turtles as the song right before kickoff that the crowd can sing along to, a la Mull of Kintyre at the City Ground. That's a good tune, that, isn't it? I like that. "Happy Together" by the Turtles. Josh Nicholson says Blue Monday. North Yorkshire Claret says always look on the bright side. Pretty good. Somebody suggested the remix. You guys will love this, I think, as much as I do, because I do play this quite often. Met a Girl in the Panama Jaws, but the Wembley 2009 remix.
Oh, yeah, I've always got that on in my house.
That's a great song. I love that one. I wind my wife. Yeah, 1994, that, weren't it?
One of my first jobs on the paper, going down to the recording of that one.
Love that one. Paul Freethy, rather cheekily again, Down Down by Status Quo. Now, this is a good one. I put this on early when I saw this on Twitter. Steve Harvey, M65, Life in a Northern Town. That's the one that also samples the same kind of as Dario G, Sunshine. Matt O'Donnell suggests Don't Stop Believing. What else have we got? A Change Would Do You Good, Sheryl Crow, which is Danny Statham out in Prague. Just One of the Boys suggests Pressure Drop by Toots and the Maytals. Beaconsfield Claret, Things Can Only Get Better. There we go. There's some good suggestions there, isn't there? I think what we're going to do is we're going to produce our own matchday playlist that we'll stick on Twitter, so you can rip that apart and what have you, and laugh at our kind of musical suggestions. And see what they are. Any other business chats before we leave it there for this week?
No. Oh yeah, what was that all about? That is bizarre, isn't it?
And I've heard that he gave the fans a bit when Tarkowski scored, but
but they were booing him before then. I was baffled by that. Has he done something wrong that I don't know about? Because as far as I can tell, we just accepted an offer for him from a club from a higher division, and he took the opportunity. What's to blame him for that? And we got more money for him than he was probably worth.
Yeah.
Well, I'd debate that. But he had a disappointing last couple of years probably with the club, hasn't he? Where he certainly stats wise, didn't stack up, and he was his own worst critic, really. But I didn't understand. He was a really really good lad who Burnley took him at 14 from Man United and turned a huge amount of money for him. And he I don't know, 150 odd games plus for the club. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand, booing his every touch and calling him a wanker and this, that, and the other. And,
It felt really weird, didn't it? I mean, he has put an Instagram story out today because I follow all these kind of people because I'm a bit cooler than you two. And he has put a club I hold dear in my heart, always wishing Burnley the best, and a love heart. I didn't think there was any animosity when he left. He got an opportunity. I think
back and watch
most
games
Burnley
like
fans
these,
yeah. I think most Burnley fans would have probably driven him to Goodison Park. At the time he went, I think he's actually, under Sean's been fantastic, and he's, they really missed him at the start of the season when he was out injured. And I agree with you, Chris and Justin. I just found it bizarre when I was watching last night and hearing the boos and seeing people on Twitter.
I thought he must have said something before the game or something like that. I mean, he did come and do the sort of ears after he'd clipped that crossover for Tarky to score in front of the Burnley fans, which probably wasn't the wisest thing to do, but they had been booing him before then. I thought, that's really strange. And I hate it. I hate it when we boo any player, former player or not, because they're always guaranteed to do something brilliant if you do that, aren't they?
Yeah. Absolutely. Right, let's leave it there, chaps. So don't forget, follow us on social media at BL Podcast on X, Twitter and Facebook. Do like, share, rate, review, do everything you can. Help us get up them charts. Share us with your friends if they don't already listen to us. And do continue to give us feedback on Twitter. We will be posting odd questions. We will be asking for questions as well. We will be back on Monday. I'm not even going to jinx it by saying hopefully with a positive show. It's going to be positive, win, lose or draw. We can guarantee you that. I think we're back to full strength on Monday as well. So until then, enjoy the game on Saturday. Don't forget, get your flag waving arms ready for West Ham later in the month, and bang whatever looks like a drum between now and then to try and raise the atmosphere. And let's see if we can get that first 3 points at home. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week and up the Clarets.
Jimmy McElroy to Watson.